The Supreme Court ruled on yesterday, in a case involving a Trump administration rule that relates to the immigration, the granting of visas to people who want a legal right to stay in America. The essential ruling had to do with the term or the meaning of the expression, a public charge. In summary, the Trump administration had decided to move forward with a rule that allows people reviewing visa applications, people applying for visas, to consider whether or not those people applying for visas either have relied on government benefits or would be likely to rely on them. Essentially, trying to stop the idea of people coming to America and getting visa so they're able to stay here, and prevent people from coming here if they're just going to come here and become public charges, or get on the public dole. The law has said for years that the immigration people can look at the public charge thing, but under the Clinton era, Obama era, the change was they only really took into consideration, would the people seeking visas coming here be looking for cash handouts? As long as they weren't coming looking for cash handouts, that wasn't a consideration. They could be granted a visa, and even if it was obvious they're going to be relying on food stamps, public housing, other sorts of non-monetary benefits. So the core of this was that the Supreme Court is agreeing to allow the enforcement of this rule to go forward. But this case actually has many more important ramifications for America. I want to be sure and talk about them today in the first 5. To start with, there's a mindset on the left that this is a cruel thing. How can we, America, in making decisions about who can come here and be granted a visa, how can we take into consideration whether or not the people can come here and be self-sufficient? Isn't that cruel and terrible? We should, in fact, argue many leftists, be more willing to take people into America if they are poor, if they are low income, if they are likely to become public charges and depend upon the handout system in our country. So one thing I want to share with you was a tweet. This is an Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweet that was about this ruling. I want to ask Matt the Wonderful to bring it up on the screen. So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, very upset about the Supreme Court ruling, said, "This is shameful. America shouldn't have a wealth test for admission. It's a place where millions of people are descendants of immigrants who came with nothing and made a life. The American dream isn't a private club with a cover charge. It's the possibility of remaking your future." I want to stop there and just say, it is just amazing the capacity the American left has, not just AOC, but so many on the left, to make very reasonable policies sound crazy, or to make their policy, which is pretty much everyone come in, everyone gets everything for free, it's all free, to make their handout ideology kind of seem like the norm, kind of reasonable. And doesn't everyone think like this? Why wouldn't everyone get to do this? Well, I want to play a quick clip, and I'm telling you, I told Matt the Wonderful today when I sent him this clip for the show, I want to play it today, but this is the mindset. This is Elizabeth Warren, a little tiny clip from her. Elizabeth Warren, when she was being asked in an interview, the person went through, you want to do free college, forgiveness of all loans, free this, free that, free health care. How are you going to pay for it all? Where's the money going to come from? And here is what the woman who would like to be your future president, Senator Elizabeth Warren, here's her answer.
And the way I see it, there's always money.
Okay. This summarizes the entire left-wing mindset about every single program they want to create. There's always money. Somehow we'll find money. She goes on to say, we spend too much in the military. We should be cutting the military budget. This is how they think. This is how Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, college graduate with an economics degree, thinks about this. No consideration for, could we run into trouble in America if we have a very open immigration system and we are perpetually granting visas to people who come to America who have no capacity to take care of themselves. And I will tell you also, folks, in this topic about whether or not countries should impose such requirements. Years ago, when we were living in California, a couple we knew, some good friends of ours, they decided to move, literally picked up and moved to New Zealand. First started looking at Australia, ended up in New Zealand. Both countries imposed a requirement before they could even attempt to move there, to apply to move there, impose a requirement that they show that they would never become dependent on welfare. They would not be public charges. This is an idea that has floated around immigration policy in countries all over the world for centuries, at least for decades. I would venture centuries. The idea you don't welcome more and more in when you are a country that hands out everything you need for free. You have a notion that your taxpayers, the people who live in your country, work hard, pay taxes, should not have to foot the bill for the government's largesse or generosity in bringing more people here and more people here and more people here and more people here without any consideration whether or not those people are going to be able to be self-sufficient, self-reliant, or are they going to come to here to in some way depend on the welfare state. One other little shot, I will give you a warning ahead of time. There's a little bit of crass language here. But the tweet I showed you a moment ago with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez brought a reply from the famous Candace Owens, founder of Blexit. She responded to AOC's tweet. If we can put that up, Matt the Wonderful. I want to show. So this is Candace Owens responding to what AOC had to say. We did not descend from American immigrants that came here for welfare. Welfare wasn't even a thing before 1935, so millions somehow made a life without shameful socialist theft from others. Also, one cannot remake their future. I'll leave the last sentence for you to read yourself, but the point is, you know, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tries to paint this flowery vision of how somehow when people come here, you know, for all we've done for centuries, everybody comes here, we hand them all free a living. That isn't what happened at all. And really, Candace Owens is exactly right. People came to America with the idea it was a land of opportunity, where if you work hard and apply yourself, you can make a life for yourself. That was the America then. What we're facing now is an America having had our immigration system, our border security system, our visa system, our asylum system, all of those taken over by left-wing thinking for decades now in Washington that have dumbed down the idea of why we bring people here, have encouraged the people coming to America who are not able to participate in the American economy, the encouragement by the left to bring in more and more people who are low-skilled, unable to work, very likely to become dependent on government handouts, and we're seeing the result of that in our economy today. So this is one initiative President Trump had where he said, you know, we're going to right this ship. We're going to look again, and we're going to apply today's criteria, rational criteria, to look at the question of whether or not we bring people here who can become self-sufficient, or we bring people here who are just going to live in the welfare state. But there's a second point about the Supreme Court decision on Monday, and perhaps it was even a more important point. In this Supreme Court decision, what's happened is, and since the time President Trump has been president, he issues executive orders, especially with respect to immigration. And then various litigious left-wing organizations around this country file lawsuits, choosing their venue, choosing the federal district courts where they think they'll find sympathy for the left-wing view. They choose federal district courts where they know the appellate court, the circuit court above the trial court, is a very liberal left-leaning. And there has been just an avalanche of litigation by leftists in this country against President Trump as he attempts to correct and fix many of the things that are wrong with the immigration system using his power of the executive order. Because many of those courts are filled with left-wing judges appointed by President Obama, President Clinton. Those courts are filled with judges who've been extremely activist in pretty much, if President Trump likes it, they don't. They find reasons to strike down much of what President Trump is trying to do in reforming our immigration system. On top of that, many of those liberal judges have decided that not only are they going to issue, if they're the district court for the Northern District of Texas, so that is when you're a federal district court judge, that's say you're the judge in the Northern District of Texas, your jurisdiction, where you're in charge, is in lawsuits properly filed in your court involving a controversy in your area, and your ruling is supposed to apply to the geographic area where your court sits. So your ruling is supposed to apply in the case of the Northern District of Texas. It applies in the Northern District of Texas. What activist judges have been doing especially in the Trump era, is issuing injunctions, finding things that President Trump has done that they don't like because they're left-wingers, and issuing orders, courts issuing orders enjoining the president from moving forward with a policy, and in their ruling, applying what they say to the entire country. District court judges, whose jurisdiction may be, the northern part of Texas or some other place, applying their rulings, just announcing in their rulings, the president, the administration is hereby enjoined from enforcing this new policy, this new rule, anywhere. It is a very activist mission, attempt, and successful, sadly, in many cases, to stall the president's agenda to do their part in the left-wing march to attack President Trump. So these judges have issued nationwide rulings, and that was the other great thing that came out of the Supreme Court decision on Monday. Neil Gorsuch, the justice in the Supreme Court appointed by President Trump, issued a concurring opinion, joined in by Clarence Thomas, essentially a shot over the bow to district court judges and circuit court judges, saying, knock it off, no more. You have jurisdiction in your area, and you can issue orders in your area, in your jurisdiction, in your circuit, if you're an appellate court circuit judge, or in your district, but you don't have the constitutional authority to issue orders on a nationwide blanket basis declaring President Trump's orders or his decisions as unconstitutional. You got to stick to the area. And this is a brilliant thing he did. People are actually starting to talk about whether Justice Gorsuch is going to step up and be the Scalia of his time, because it was a very forcefully worded concurrence and a definite message. You got to knock it off. So, to be clear, on this executive order relating to who's a public charge, there have been numerous rulings by a competing number of district courts. In the meantime, the Supreme Court said that the president can go forward, the administration can go forward using this new rule about public charges. But also the Supreme Court decision is the Supreme Court decision is letting the district court judges, these liberal judges around the country, know that they are not going to continue. They have no constitutional authority to continue issuing nationwide injunctions. Great move by Justice Gorsuch. Great move, really, to begin to restore the rule of law in this country and to put a halt, a bump in the road in the effort the American left has to undermine Trump at every possible conceivable step of the way. That, my friends, is today's First Five.